Good morning, everyone. My name is Shannon Smith, and I am, as Nick said, with Way Academy. And this conversation started downstate in Dearborn over lunch at one of the regional meetings. And it was something that I think there was a lot of interest in, a lot of curiosity. And so I want to thank you, Nick, for really giving us a chance to expand and have more dialogue. One thing that I want to say is that that's really kind of the expectation. It's going to be much less of a presentation and much more of a dialogue because there are a number of experts in the room. So what I'd like to do is start by really identifying those that are kind of doing some blended learning or online work. If you could just kind of raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 6. So we've got 6 additional panelists in the room that we're going to be coming to in order to really kind of help keep the discussion alive and going. How many of you have read Clayton Christensen's Disrupting Class? Okay. In that text, he coined a phrase, disruptive innovation. And a disruptive innovation, does anyone know what a disruptive innovation is? Awesome. Okay. A disruptive innovation is something that changes forever a particular market, a particular segment of society or technology. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples. One is the MP3. The MP3 in the late 80s and early 90s was thought of as a lower quality audio file, and those that listened to DVDs and records said, this technology will never last. Now it's the standard. It's the standard of musical distribution. It's the standard of, and it's completely changed the way that we listen to audio. I'm sure that many of you have smartphones with music on them in your pockets as we speak. The flat screen television is another innovative disruption. It was thought of initially as much too expensive to produce. The resolution was much lower than that of the CRT. And now, very quickly, they are the standard. It's said that by the year 2019, there will be 50% of the courses that high school students take will be online. So I really want us to kind of be in this space because blended learning and online learning is really thought of as an innovative disruptor of education. And it's something that we really want to kind of talk about. Now, there are various models, but before we get into those models, let's really kind of talk about what blended learning is. Let's just define that so that we have an operational definition as we move forward. Are there any experts in the room that we can kind of point to kind of talk to us about what blended learning means to you and in your work? Not everyone at the same time. Anyone dabbling in it want to throw a definition out there? It's called wait time, educators, and we've got an hour. Yes? Absolutely. Did everyone hear him? He said it's a blend. It's a blend of traditional coursework or brick and mortar coursework with the young person having an opportunity to pick the time, the path, the place for their learning outside of that space. Blended learning. Now, blended learning comes in a few different flavors and in a few different models, and they range from we had a signal just a moment ago, and we got it back. From much more traditional to much more online. And I'm going to go through each of these, and then I'm going to speak a little bit about what we're doing. Paul and Travis are going to talk about their work, and then we're going to talk about some of the work that you're doing, and we'll answer some questions and go from there. The rotation model is a model that, in a classroom setting, has young people moving from a traditional instructional setting to the technology. And this can be station rotation, lab rotation, the flipped classroom, or individual rotation, but it is much more of a traditional setting with technology infused in the instruction. The flex model has some online delivery of content with support for young people in a traditional setting. The a la carte model is a model that most high school students choose, and that's really a student choosing to take an online course as a supplement to work that they're doing in a traditional setting. And the enriched virtual model has all of the content delivered online with occasional face-to-face meetings. So along this continuum, I'm going to actually ask Travis to come up and share some of his work, what he's doing, and we'll go from there.
All right, thank you. Our model that we are doing actually at WSC Academy is the enriched virtual model. Last year our school started as strictly a credit recovery school, and all student work was done on Play-Doh courses online. This year, to kind of help out with our scores and help out with the progress of our students, we're going to the enriched virtual model where we will be doing project-based learning to apply the standards and skills learned on the Play-Doh. Last year we had one certified teacher at each location. This year we hired 4 core teachers at each location, each campus, to kind of help with that, the Play-Doh learning as well as the project-based learning, and do student pullouts, one-on-one activities, group activities with the students to help progress in the scores.
Travis is going to share where he is.
I am at WSC Academy, awesome. Brighton and Ypsilanti.
Yeah, Paul Vanerkau. I'm with an education service provider called Innovative Education Services. That's who I work for. We have 2 schools. One is the IN Academy, and it has been authorized with Lake Superior State for 1 year. It would be, we don't like to call it traditional, so we call it classic model, but it's a brick and mortar school. It actually has been operating as a school. This is its 7th year, but 1 year as a charter school. It is about 220 kids, K through 8. And last year we did a bit of a beta high school, which was a dozen kids, just shy, who did the, I would call a little bit of the a la carte and then mostly the enriched virtual as a seat time waiver prototype. And then this past year we were awarded a new school district, which is called Academy Global. And so that is it's a separate school, but it falls under the same education service provider, and it follows the same foundations, principles, vision statements as our brick and mortar classic school. What Academy Global is going to be doing is we'll be starting blended from the full online. So I almost call blended to me, and it is the interface of both of those things, a chance for kids to actually have interface physically. Our school will be based 100% on the online foundation versus 100% from the physical, where I think a lot of you are starting from. So we'll be developing and making sure that our courses and every option comes from an online perspective. Supplementing that will be our blended offerings. Now the blended offering for us initially is going to be quite limited. And it is, since most of our initial enrollees are going to be coming from and are coming from a very engaged parent base of homeschool kids, their choice of blended isn't as demanding. In other words, their blended often happens at home and is supplemented with all kinds of activities through what is already an existing homeschool network. But where we want to grow is to be able to offer areas throughout the state where kids can come together and not only can come together and get physical project-based learning activity. So that is where we're moving toward. Initially, we're starting with a single blended campus, so to speak, on our where IN Academy exists. It's a Homestead campus. We have a opportunity for our kids to come in 2 or 3 segments throughout the week. And as they get older, it becomes more of their choice on when they want to be there or not. The content that we're looking at delivering from a blended perspective, I mentioned the project-based learning, and that will come from various different core subjects. But then we'll also work on some of our other foundational things in which the schools are built on, and that's offering leadership curriculum, stewardship opportunities, and global perspectives, which will also filter through the blended activity. Yeah?
Thank you. At Way Academy, we offer a project-based learning environment for our researchers that is a 50-50 blended environment where they come into a lab setting with our highly qualified content area experts, a minimum of 12 hours per week, 3 days per week, and we schedule those hours based on their needs, and that's the minimum. They're often in lab much more than that. And these are projects that are based around their interests, and they co-create curriculum alongside some of our experts, as well as they have a selection of projects that they can choose from that are based on the Common Core. So we provide technology, iMac desktops, as well as internet connectivity for all of our young people. And we've just been enjoying ourselves, and our young people have been learning lots. We have 3 charters this fall, 3 academies, one in Flint, one in southwest Detroit, the other on the west side of Detroit. And our organization also works with ISDs and districts throughout the state to support them with professional development. And we also have programs that we partner with as well. Now, we also have some other folks that are doing some of this work in the audience, and I want to give them an opportunity to share a little bit about their program. And then we'll really kind of have some discussion about some of the challenges, some of the successes, and all those pieces. Is there anyone else who would like to share just some of the work that they're doing?
I'm from Concord Academy in Petoskey, and I'm not sure which model ours is. Basically, our high school had diminished to a point where we could not keep a traditional program going. So in order to keep our high school, we have gone to an online option for most of the core curriculum, but we are an arts-intensive school, so we are keeping our brick and mortar fine arts program with music and theater and all of that. So in one sense, we're an online school, but in another sense, they're all showing up to go to all their fine arts classes. So I don't know if that's a la carte or what that one is.
That's a great question, and everyone won't fit on that line, so thank you. Any other programs that we're thinking about, that we're starting, that we're working with currently? I'll get you, and then I'll get you.
I am with a school called DATA, Detour Area Arts and Technology, and we're the most local, I think, of the programs here. We are fairly new. I would say we're probably a la carte in nature. We have a brick and mortar school that is K-6, and then from 7 through 12, we have an online program offered, and at this point, it is delivered in many different options with the local school districts. We have youngsters that are more towards, I would say, enriched because they have some center-based, although it is not as frequent as the downstate people. They have centers to come to here at LSSU, at St. Ignace, and in Detour. Then we have other youngsters that are a little bit more like Petoskey, that are just one course only, and we're still evolving.
Thank you. Well, all right.
I'm Katie from Concord Academy, and we're very untraditional brick and mortar school, but we have teachers who are using
Thank you. Now, if you are not doing any of this work and you're in discussion or you've thought about it, I want to give you just a moment to take a look at this kind of sliding scale, and I want you to think about where you'd like to be. And I want you to take just a moment to really think about if this is work that you could see yourself moving in. If this is a direction you could see yourself moving in, where would you like to be on this scale? You can feel free to discuss it with your neighbors. It's not timed. It's all good. Talk about it. It's fine.
It is what it is, man. I was not expecting to come up here and talk.
All right, guys. I'd like to bring us back as a group and actually ask if there's anyone who would like to share just what some of their thoughts were about the question that I asked, or any other thoughts that you may have about this. It was awesome. Go ahead.
And I see even graduate level students having difficulties in working in team and collaboration. So my question would be going to like Matt. I love that we used to work together. But Matt, to the total enriched virtual model, how do you deal with the socialization skills that you get that you'll be missing out on? I mean, obviously, I mean, we're technologically driven, internationally, but how do we deal with the fact that we're still going to have to collaborate and meet? And some students, even us today, some of us, it's difficult for us to collaborate and communicate and socialize in a way that's effective, that can move an agenda forward. So does some of these models even make that a more perilous move in relation to that? That's just my thoughts, and anybody can respond.
Is there anyone doing any 100% virtual programming that can directly address that?
With ours, we're going to have the project-based learning component with it as well. And our projects are going to build up throughout the year till the fourth quarter. We're looking at a community-based group project to kind of instill the collaboration with all the students.
Go ahead. My immediate response would be absolutely not. There is an increasing ability for young people to effectively utilize and manage these tools to create really awesome high quality products with appropriate support. And so while you wouldn't consider having a third grader on a modified or shortened schedule, what you would really want to do if you were thinking about moving in this direction with an elementary group is bringing the technology into the classroom and possibly using something like the rotation model to move them to the technology throughout their day. So no, the kids they're ready for this. That's a great question, and that's why with the rotation model, they're always in the brick and mortar with the technology, they're just moving from direct instruction to the use of the technology, and so there's no, they're never out of the sight of their person that's offering them support.
So is my understanding now, then, it would probably work better for maybe 11th, 12th graders to not be in the rotation model, but look at maybe a type model?
It depends on the young person, and it depends on your local context and what the needs of your population are. Yeah, I don't think that's age dependent at all.
Yeah, just a couple comments on that, and I would, and again, speaking from the far right, is our K-4 offering for the younger ones is really only about an hour a day interfacing a device, and so that might be games, it might be some type of a visual interface. You guys have all seen electronic learning tools for younger kids, but I think that the research still doesn't support one way or another yet how those devices actually fundamentally help kids learn or not. And so I would agree with one of the comments that was made a minute ago. There is some peril associated with that needs to be understood. We've seen as kids are moving up in our brick and mortar school associated with technology, for sure blended opportunities exist from third grade on up. And then as kids individually develop, and we have a just right learning approach in our school, that there are 5th, 6th, 7th graders who are very self-motivated and independent, who work very well. And then there's other ones like my middle child who needs, he needs more attention than what just being able to hand him a device and say, go ahead and make it happen. As a school for our Academy Global, we recognize that peril that exists. I think that collaboration was the comment earlier, and kids being able to interface both physically and online. And we're seeing that that as kids grow, that the ability to lead in both of those environments, the ability to be able to have relationships both online and relationships physically, that content and delivery needs to happen in both so kids can do that. We're also developing a lot of future work around how kids connect and parents connect with a virtual school or with a blended school, so that traditional feel is not going to be there. What are the connections and the associations and the community that's developed around something that is a little bit more online and less brick and mortar? But when you take a look at growing kids in those areas of connections, our kids will all experience from middle school up to high school international trips. And what was a really interesting experience this year is our kids went to the Dominican Republic. And historically, a trip like that, kids would meet kids and they'd have a conversation, and then they would come back to their hometown, and they would have been experienced in their heart, but that would be which can be very dramatic, that would be the extent of it. What happened this year, which was for me very interesting, is our kids interfaced kids there. Some of them didn't have shoes, some of them only had one pair of clothes, some of them came from very dramatic, broken families, all kinds of issues you can imagine in a third world country. When they got back on Sunday, their Facebook was lit up with requests from these kids for friendships. And these kids have access globally to Facebook, even though they may not be able to have a second pair of shoes. And so the ability for kids to grow in those kind of connections and relationships globally is, I think, a very powerful tool for kids long term.
And Paul brings up a very good point. And it's really the ability to publish on a global scale as an individual. It's a power that no one in the history of humans has had at their disposal. I mean, let me give you an example. A high school student can tape a teacher flipping out, upload it to YouTube, and by lunchtime have 5 million views. Multinational corporations couldn't purchase that 15 years ago. And so the ability to publish and the amount of responsibility that goes along with that is huge. At Way Academy, our young people are immersed in a project-based learning environment, and we actually develop projects around their interests. So it wouldn't be unlikely for a young person to work with an expert to plan and implement a community garden or recycling program or any of those other pieces with all of the collaboration built into that. And so our learning takes place very much in a physical space with a great deal of support in an online environment as well. But as you think about kind of your plans, you really want to kind of think about things like time on a sliding scale. So am I going to have a fixed schedule? Are there going to be open entry points and exit points for young people? What will the role of the student be? Will the role of the student be to kind of drive the instruction? Will the teacher drive the instruction? And these are all pieces that you want to consider if you think about this, because, and you also want to think about the level of student support. Will there be little of no support needed? Will there be lots of support? Will there be online mentoring needed? At Way Academy, each of our young persons has an online mentor that communicates with them daily, that supports them with resources, with academic supports, and that's every day of the year. We're actually open 300 days a year, Monday through Saturday. So we just think differently about where we have kids come in to school and when they come into school. So it's just a completely different way of viewing how the work gets done. Any other questions? One question that came from Patty, and I'm going to get to yours in just one moment, was, so what are the learning tools that we're using? I heard Play-Doh. At Way, we actually create projects for our young people, and we co-create projects with our young people. So that's all done by our highly qualified content area experts. Is there any other, what are you guys doing, Travis?
Our projects will also be created by teachers and student-driven as we move throughout the year, but the first couple projects will actually be created by teachers, and then we also use that with the Play-Doh.
We're using Canvas as the learning management system for the portal, for which kids and parents and teachers actually have access to the content, and then content provider. What's unique about Academy Global is that we're going to offer a choice of curriculum, and that choice will broaden obviously with time. But right now, say for the 5 through 12, we're offering the choice of Odyssey-ware, Florida State Virtual, GridPoint, and Edgenuity. Those are the 4 that are being offered the first year, and then we'll grow that. We also have a professional content developing company called Innoversity, which provides and develops online content for companies for their training. So, you know, whether it's high-low driving or whether it's something much more sophisticated for organizations, this organization provides and develops content, and they will also be moving into the educational world to help our certified teachers develop content that in turn can be provided in multiple languages.
Is there anyone that's using any learning system that we haven't discussed yet? Anything outside of Play-Doh or any of those other options?
Using something that's a little bit different. I've used Mystery Virtual University in the past. We've got so we're piloting some different things. excuse me, we're piloting, is that on? We're piloting a few things. I'm from the Charlton Heston Academy, and so we've got a little bit of a different model. We're year-round, and it's an extended school day, so our students go to school about 1,650 hours a year, and so it's 8 to 4:30 every day, and then all year. And so in the summer months, so the summer portion of the fourth quarter, we're trying to make sure it's spiced up, and so we've had our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders for the summer months enrolled in math tracks through Michigan Virtual. And really math tracks is kind of created for gifted and talented students at a certain level, above grade level. But it's worked for all students to at least give us another kind of idea of where they're at in the program. But again, it's just, we're just kind of piloting it. It's one of many things we're trying. And I think as we move forward, we're adding a high school. So I offer you that, but I also want to ask a question. As we offer the high school, I think we're kind of wondering if you have any experience with so the online portion, but also for dual enrollment. So online courses for high school kids, and then receiving the college credits. I don't know if you could speak a little bit about that.
We've got a couple of different options on our table at Way Academy. One, we've been working with Lake Superior State University to have our staff, our faculty, kind of certified as adjunct faculty to offer concurrent course credit. And we're also hoping to establish a relationship with the University of Michigan Dearborn to offer on-college opportunities to our young people as well. So they're excited about that, and they're open to the opportunity, and so we hope to pursue both of those this upcoming year. You got a question? We've actually, we're closing out our first year, and so we have baseline data. I hope to come back to you this time next year and talk to you about all the amazing growth that we've seen. But you said something pretty key, and that's compliance. The state system of compliance is not designed for this work. And there are a number of challenges that I can personally speak to navigate with getting the work done. And so you've got to be creative. You've got to reach out to your partners at the MDE. And they've been helpful, and they've offered assistance in navigating the system as it exists. But it has been challenging because it's not set up for kids that are working from home or working online or not in a seat for 1,098 hours. I mean, it's just not designed for that. Pupil accounting, all of those pieces are challenges that have to be thought about and very thoughtfully and strategically navigated, because after all, the doors have to stay open if we're going to continue to do good work. So being in compliance is so incredibly important, and there's some challenges that go along with that.
Is there some discussion about kind of tweaking their setup and compliance requirements? Because we're year-round and we struggle with that too.
Absolutely. I know. We got some folks that have been working very closely with the state. Hold that thought.
So yes, we have been working very closely with the state. Does this turn off? That worked really closely, and the reason being is we absolutely want to be in compliance, because the compliance issues are there for child safety and to ensure that kids are learning. So the goal isn't to circumvent compliance; is to understand what it is you're supposed to be compliant and why. So with that in mind, the way that we work, we have our charter schools, but we also have 11 other schools or ISDs that we work with to run their schools. And what we always look at are, we have our state compliance issues, and then we have how the county chooses to interpret those. So you have the law, and then you have the interpretation. You have rules, and then you have the interpretation of those rules. So unfortunately, you're not going to get that same interpretation in every single county. But what you absolutely can do is sit down up front with the county leaders and say, how is it that you are going to interpret this, and what data or what physically do you want to see to ensure that we have compliance? Because we want to meet that. We need your help for when you come in or when you're doing an audit, and we welcome you to come in and do an audit because we want to have everything ready for you. With that attitude, they've pretty much said, okay, I'm going to need to see this, this, and this in order for you to be compliant. So you show it to them. Or if you're on a seat time waiver and they say, I need to see how many hours they've been in each course. Well, guess what? For us, we're not course-based. I don't know if Shannon had mentioned that, but when we say project-based, we are project-based that are aligned to the content standards. We're not course-based. We're credit-based. We're standards-based. I'm sorry, I'm not sure I can show you what you're asking for, so let's figure out how I'm going to get you that information. And so we start looking at that piece. And what is it that they're going to see to make them feel comfortable? Wayne County is a lot harder than Genesee County. Yeah.
Still great to work with.
Oh, no, sorry, I'm assuming everybody knows where... I'm assuming everybody knows where I'm coming from. Thank you. You're right. I used to work for Wayne Risa, so I say that in a loving way. I know what their restrictions are a little more difficult. That's all there is to it. So what? So you just work with it. You be water. You work around it. Did you have something in specific though that you were like one of the compliance issues that? Right. Mm-hmm. Can I hand that to you? We don't do summer. Summer school would be supplanting because you're year-round, but I'm going to hand that over to Glenn.
Yeah, he knows he can't do it. I don't. As far as Title I's concerned in a year-round program, I think there certainly are absolutely nuances, but I think there's also ways that you would be, because it doesn't preclude you from utilizing, if you're targeted assistance or if you're school-wide, from utilizing those services even through the summer, right? So it doesn't mean that you couldn't implement and give the targeted assistance to the students that need that assistance based on your Title I dollars, or, I mean, if you just couldn't use it for a summer school program, but you could employ teachers that work year-round using your Title I dollars, right? So that doesn't, you just extend the service. Other people use those dollars for summer school because they're not open at that time, and they want to give that targeted assistance and additional assistance to kids when school's not open. So, yeah. Title I is always going to have its nuances. It's the same as utilizing some of your at-risk dollars as well. So we employ certified teachers as mentors for anywhere from 6 to 7 students. So some of those dollars can be utilized for some of those support positions because they're not your highly qualified teachers that are within the traditional setting. They're an additional add-on of support. So that's one way that you can incorporate some of that dollar use to really support the learning. Yeah.
Behind the compliance has to be understood and why it's there, and in some cases it's black and white, in other cases, I find my experiences they've been very receptive to getting into the dialogue.
I forgot to mention a very key role that LSSU is playing in keeping us compliant. We don't underestimate the help. So when we have our LSSU liaison, all of us and ensure that we're in compliance, but also it is helpful. All those nagging emails you get from it is really very helpful because it ensures that you're
And to really echo what Paul has shared, it's really about being proactive and reaching out, asking what kind of documentation will you need to see in order for us to demonstrate the fact that we are compliant and just working with them, because they will work with you to navigate the system. There was another question back here and then over here. You're done. All right. Over here.
In a previous life, I have some experience with blended learning and working and running with those programs. I kind of wanted to steer the conversation a little bit back towards content providers, and everybody on the panel, you mentioned some really good ones. Also, Compass Learning, Apex, E2020 are great content providers. I was just kind of curious what criteria that you all use to determine what software system would be the best fit for your students.
What criteria did you use to determine those systems that were put in place?
With me, it was already in place when I got there, but I think it was chosen because it was very user-friendly and affordable. Yeah, user-friendly and affordable. I've gotten on it a little bit. Teachers have gotten on it some. Student view is very, very user-friendly, very easy to navigate, very easy to understand, and very self-explanatory. There's reports that you get with it that the teachers can view, so that's why we chose Play-Doh.
We basically just created a multi-page rubric, an evaluation. My background is engineering, so I was a decision maker. And we went through and just listed about 30 different items, from usability to teacher interface to interconnectivity to how does it align with Michigan's expectations, where does it align with the future of what Common Core and our interpretation of that was. And we have some experience, past experience with Edgenuity, which is the renamed E2020. And so it was all of those things. And when you're looking at a content provider and the ability for kids to be motivated through that, that was one of the number one criteria. Is when kids are going through this, is this going to, our kids going to stay engaged with this stuff? Because it is moving forward more. There's a group of kids, I believe, that are motivated, independent, self-directed, and are going to fly through any content that you give them. But what we want to do is we want to be able to offer this to a broader group. And I'm of the opinion that online isn't for every kid, obviously, but we do want to be able to make that an option for as many as we can. And there's going to be a curriculum explosion happening in the next 5 years. When you look at what the country of Singapore is doing and offering huge amounts of money to be the global leader in online content provider, that's just going to try to raise to be able to provide an unbelievable amount, I think, of very, very qualified curriculum for a great price.
I'm just going to comment as well. I think it can't be underestimated. Like, there's a lot of systems out there right now that create algorithms to create playlists for students to engage with curriculum, right? It's one thing that software companies like and produce in some capacity because it's scalable, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best way for students to learn. And having a relationship with students and having a dynamic curriculum around, and Shannon talked about what their interests were, but having teachers actually know the students and actually create and link those projects into the community, or how are you getting to those spaces and you can still leverage all the online pieces, digital content. Our teachers right now are actually creating iBooks, and yes, it's one function and it has all the multimedia in it, and that was just an attempt of looking at how are you going to best utilize a mobile device if we ever go to one. And we haven't decided to, but we'd be prepared to go there. But again, I think the great space for curriculum that's coming is really around teacher created and getting it to a space where they can actually produce the digital content that students would be engaging with around their communities and around where they know students and have those needs that can really personalize it down to a student level. I mean, they're not necessarily leveraging 30 kids in a class. They could, and maybe some of your schools want to do that, but having teachers involved in that process that are local, I think, is a huge capacity piece that we're not tapping into enough, where they have the relationship with the students, the families, the communities, that can really build some really powerful projects. So,
Do we have any other questions? comments?
I don't know. We, of course, yesterday and part of today heard presentations on the state's fascination and reliance upon standardized scores. And so I was just curious about some of the issues of adjusting what appears to be an open and somewhat creative and fluid situation to the standardized testing model that the state is pushing that seems to be geared around the more traditional brick and mortar setting with specific timelines, outcomes, and pacing. How do you reconcile those two realms in my mind?
I don't know that you do, Keith. I think that one part of when you think about Common Core and career and college readiness standards, blended learning gives, as Glenn said earlier, an opportunity for a teacher to spend a great deal of time individually and in small groups with the content, with the kids to really, I mean, it's really all about time. And when you talk about blended learning, you have an opportunity to work from home. You have an opportunity to create products that demonstrate your understanding of the material. And so I don't know that you take one and say, well, we're doing things and thinking like this. How do we fit into this box? Because when a young person can demonstrate to you that they understand something, they'll be able to transfer that demonstration to that standardized test.
Just when you talk about like open entry and open exit of particular courses or levels, and of course people come to your program at all different ages and levels of their learning, it just seems that you could be doing absolutely wonderful things, the students moving at their own particular pace, but it doesn't necessarily fit in perfect juxtaposition to when the state says that by the time they're at this age, they're going to take the MME and have this outcome, and now Way Academy is going to get thrilled because your test scores don't conform to the great things that you're necessarily doing.
Now that's a whole different conversation, and you're right. When they get to me, we are working to catch them up. And as was stated yesterday, 1 year's growth for 1 year's worth of instruction is not enough. So it's to take these young people. The goal is to take them and move them as expeditiously as possible to that next level. But it's what we do. It's a responsibility that we take on. We don't get to say, well, he couldn't read when I got him. We say, let's teach him, and let's do what needs to be done in order to make it happen. And there are no excuses. So it's not always pretty. It's not always fun, but it's work that we just do. Any other questions? Well, thanks for listening. We have enjoyed ourselves.